When he was 12, Noah learned something most people never learn in their entire lifetime. The world listens too closely to your dreams. He didn't learn it through books or some wise mentor. He learned it the loud, humiliating way, standing in the middle of a crowded classroom while his teacher read aloud the little essay he had written about the future. His dream was simple. He wanted to build things, apps, machines, ideas. He wanted to create something that would outlive him. He wrote it all down with the innocence of a boy who believed the world would clap for honesty, but the class didn't clap. They laughed, not a soft laugh. A sharp, cutting laugh that told him he was dreaming out of his league. The teacher didn't stop them. She smirked. That smirk stayed with him far longer than the laughter. That day, Noah realized something important. People don't hate your dreams. They hate the reminder that they gave up on theirs. He stopped talking after that, at least about anything that mattered. As he grew older, he became the quiet one. Not shy, just unavailable. He carried his dreams like they were fragile glass, too precious to expose to careless hands. Every time someone asked what he wanted to do with his life, he shrugged and said he didn't know. But he knew. He always knew. He was just done giving people the privilege of knowing what burned inside him. Life moved on like a slow, gray movie. Noah worked part-time jobs, studied quietly, stayed out of the spotlight, but inside him something was building, a pressure, a hunger, a silent fire. At 17, he started staying up late, working alone, learning alone, building alone. His family thought he was wasting time. His friends thought he was boring. Nobody knew he was constructing the foundation for the life he wanted. And that's when he discovered something dangerous and powerful. Silence is not weakness. Silence is protection. Silence is strategy. While everyone else showed their plans, Noah hid his. While others bragged about what they would do one day, he moved quietly, inch by inch. His first real break came the night he created a tiny app that helped students organize their schedules. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't pretty, but it worked. And the moment he saw the code come alive, he felt something inside him shift. It wasn't pride. It was certainty. The certainty that he could build more, much more, but the universe likes to test people who dream too hard. A week later, he made the mistake of telling the wrong person. Her name was Lila, a friend. Or at least, he thought so. They had grown close, sharing quiet talks and stolen late-night walks. She wasn't like the others. She listened. She made him feel safe. So he told her. He told her he wanted to build something bigger, an app people would use every day, maybe even a company. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. He didn't notice it then, but he would. By the next month, she had told everyone. Not the truth, but a twisted version. She laughed about his dreams to classmates, calling him a wannabe genius, a boy trying too hard. His dream became a joke again. Noah didn't explode. He didn't confront her. He didn't complain or defend himself. He simply disappeared from the world's expectations. That was the night he made a promise to himself. Never again will I give someone the chance to step on my dreams. He shut off the noise. He stopped sharing. He stopped explaining. He stopped justifying. He built a private universe inside himself where his goals lived safely. He worked in the dark. Quiet streets at midnight became his office. His laptop became his closest friend. His ambition became oxygen. While the world partied, he wrote code. While the world slept, he researched. While the world talked, he built. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't angry. He was patient. That's the thing most people never understand about silent workers. They don't move slow because they lack ambition. They move slow because they're building something real. Real things take time. Noise is cheap. Silence is expensive. But silence has a price. The more Noah grew in silence, the more he drifted away from people. His friendships faded, his family worried. He missed out on birthdays, dinners, simple joys. He kept telling himself it was worth it, and maybe it was, but the loneliness started whispering, soft, subtle, asking questions that hurt. What if you fail? What if everyone was right about you? What if nobody cares? What if you're building a life that won't matter to anyone but you? Noah tried to drown the thoughts in work, but silence makes the mind louder. Nights became heavier. His screen became the only source of light in his room. His heart felt tired. His dreams felt heavy. But one night changed everything. He was scrolling through old project files when he saw the first app he had ever made, the little student organizer. He opened it, expecting to cringe at the messy code. Instead, he smiled. It reminded him of why he started, not for applause, not for validation, not for approval. He started because building made him feel alive. And for the first time in years, Noah breathed deeply. He closed his eyes. He decided something dangerous, something freeing. He would keep working in silence, but not from fear, from strength. This wasn't about hiding anymore. This was about growing, about rising without noise, about building without witnesses, because storms don't announce themselves. They arrive, they take over, they change everything. And Noah was becoming a storm. Noah didn't tell anyone about the silent shift inside, and why would he? People don't notice the exact moment a seed cracks open underground. They only notice the tree once it's towering above them. He liked that idea. He liked the raw, private beauty of becoming something in the dark, so he pushed harder. Mornings blurred into nights. His routine became a cycle of quiet rituals. Coffee that tasted like determination, headphones that blocked out every voice but his own, notebooks filled with ideas he never spoke aloud. He created schedules so strict they left no space for doubt. His phone stayed on silent for days. Social media became a distant memory. People started talking. They said he was strange, cold, obsessed. They said he was wasting his youth. They said he thought he was better than everyone. But Noah wasn't angry at them. He just didn't see the point in explaining himself to people who lived their lives waiting for validation, people who needed applause before they took a step, people who measured success by how many eyes were watching. Noah measured success by one thing: how far he could go without anyone knowing. He became a shadow, a ghost drifting through hallways, classrooms, sidewalks. He didn't crave attention anymore, he craved progress. But silence is a double-edged blade. It can protect you, or it can cut you open. One winter night, when the world outside was frozen and the wind hammered against his window like a warning, Noah hit his first true wall. His code crashed. His project broke. Everything he had spent months building collapsed into a mess of errors he couldn't untangle. Hours passed, his eyes burned, his hands shook, his screen glowed with mistakes he didn't know how to fix, and for the first time in a long time he felt small. He pushed his laptop away. His chest tightened. He stood up and paced the room, trying to outrun the frustration crawling under his skin. The silence, which had always felt like a safe place, suddenly became a cage. No one knew what he was working on. No one could help him. No one even knew he needed help. He sat on the floor, leaned back against the wall, and let the heaviness settle on him like a storm cloud. He wondered if he had gone too far into his private world, if he had locked himself inside something he couldn't escape. But then he remembered something, a memory sharper than Lila's betrayal, sharper than the class laughing at him. It was of his mother's hands, rough from work, gentle in motion, rubbing warmth back into his fingers on cold mornings. She used to say, "If your hands can't hold on anymore, let your heart hold you for a while." So he did. He closed his eyes, he breathed, he let his heart hold him for a moment. And when he opened his eyes again, he wasn't frustrated anymore. He was focused. He sat back at his desk. He reopened the code. He rebuilt everything line by line. And somewhere in the quiet, a thought rose inside him, soft but powerful. Struggle is not a sign you should stop. Struggle is proof you're building something bigger than you. Hours later, the app finally worked. When he saw the success message flash across his screen, he didn't cheer. He didn't smile wide. He didn't jump up. He just exhaled, a long, slow breath that tasted like victory earned in the dark. He shut his laptop. He leaned back in his chair. He whispered to himself, "This is what working in silence does. It makes you stronger than you ever planned to be." The world still didn't know what he was building, but Noah wasn't hiding anymore. He was preparing. And as days turned into months, something began to change around him. People noticed he was quieter than usual, more distant, more disciplined, but they couldn't figure him out, and that bothered them. Humans fear what they cannot read. And Noah had become unreadable. Some tried to pull him back into their world. Some mocked him for disappearing. Some pretended to care. Some whispered lies behind his back. But none of it touched him. He had mastered something rare, something most people spend a lifetime chasing. The ability to stay committed without needing an audience. That power made him calm, steady, unshakable. He walked through life like someone holding a secret the world wasn't ready for yet. And in a way, he was. His project, the one that had broken him and rebuilt him, was evolving into something real, something meaningful. But Noah kept it quiet, because he had learned one truth that would forever shape his life. When you talk too much about what you're doing, you give people the power to stop you. When you move silently, you give yourself the power to finish. He wasn't finished yet, not even close, and deep inside him, beneath the layers of discipline, fear, hunger, and quiet fire, something new was forming, not just ambition, not just purpose, something heavier, something sharper, something that would change his entire life, a shift, a spark, a storm preparing to break, and when it finally did, the world would have no choice but to notice. Noah didn't notice the shift at first. It came slowly, like winter creeping across a field, silent, invisible, but undeniable. His silent routine became something more than habit. It became armor. It became identity. He woke earlier, stayed up later, worked harder, pushed deeper into the world he was building alone. People came and went from his life like passing seasons, but he stayed constant, steady, unmoved. He wasn't avoiding the world anymore. He was surpassing it. Still, silence changes a person in ways they don't always see. Years passed, and Noah entered college. A new city, a new environment, a new chance for the world to misunderstand him. But he didn't care. He wasn't there for friends or attention. He was there for one thing only: progress. He lived in a tiny rented room with peeling paint and a window that rattled when the wind hit it. Most nights the room felt too small to hold the weight of his ambition. But Noah didn't complain. Small rooms grow big minds. Quiet places sharpen loud dreams. He set up his desk near the window, facing the city lights, and told himself he would rest only when his work became undeniable. His classmates noticed him immediately, not because he tried to stand out, but because he didn't. There was a seriousness about him, a focus, a silence so deep it made people uncomfortable. Some were curious, some were intimidated, some were jealous, but none of them knew what was coming. Noah worked through lectures, through storms, through late nights when the whole building slept. His project, the one he had rebuilt from ashes, was growing into something powerful. It wasn't perfect, but it had a heartbeat. It had potential. He didn't tell anyone, not a soul. He learned to smile politely when people asked what he was working on. Nothing much, Enos, he always said, but inside he was building a kingdom. The world has a strange way of reacting to quiet strength. People don't notice it until they feel threatened by it. And Noah's silence was starting to bother people, especially one person, Ethan. He was the kind of guy who grew up being told he was special. Loud confidence, polished charm, easy smile. The type of person who believed success was his birthright. Class president in high school, debate champion, everyone's favorite golden boy. He was used to being the smartest in the room, the most talented, the center of attention. But Noah didn't give him that attention, and that irritated him. Ethan first noticed Noah in a programming class. Noah sat in the back, hoodie up, eyes on his screen, answering questions only when forced to. But every time he spoke with a precision Ethan couldn't ignore. There's nothing more dangerous to a loud person than a quiet person who knows more. Ethan didn't like threats, and Noah felt like one. So Ethan did what insecure people always do. He tried to expose Noah. He asked him questions in front of the class, tried to corner him, tried to force him to speak more, tried to make him stumble. But Noah never stumbled. He answered calmly, clearly, without ego. And every time he spoke, Ethan saw his image crack a little. It bothered him deeply. But the real fire started the day their professor announced a semester-long innovation challenge, a competition. Build something useful, something original, something real. Ethan immediately took the spotlight. He gathered a team. He promoted himself as the natural leader. He gave loud speeches about innovation and excellence. Noah stayed silent. He didn't need a team. He didn't need praise. He didn't need noise. He signed up alone. People whispered, "He's crazy. He'll never win alone. He's too quiet to compete. He probably doesn't even have an idea." Noah heard none of it. He was too deep into his work. And deep in Ethan's chest, something sharp twisted, or because Ethan wasn't afraid Noah would fail, he was afraid Noah would win. The weeks that followed were brutal. Ethan's team worked loudly, meetings, arguments, group brainstorming sessions, constant online posts showing their progress. Noah worked quietly, coding at night, researching between classes, scribbling ideas on napkins while eating cheap cafeteria meals. He lost sleep. He lost weight. But he didn't lose momentum. He built in silence because silence sharpened him, but silence also isolated him. One night around 2 a.m., Noah sat at his desk staring at lines of code that refused to cooperate. His chest felt tight. His head throbbed. The screen blurred. He reached for coffee but found an empty mug. He was exhausted beyond words. For the first time in a long time, he felt the edge of loneliness again. He had pushed everyone away. He had hidden everything he cared about. He had made himself a ghost. And ghosts don't get rescued. He closed his laptop and rubbed his eyes, feeling the weight of the entire world resting on his shoulders. He wondered, just for a moment, if maybe he had been wrong. Maybe silence wasn't strength. Maybe silence was suffocating him. But then a small notification popped up on his screen, an automated reminder he had set months before. You didn't come this far just to break here. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he smiled, a small, tired but real smile. He opened his laptop again. His fingers moved with new fire. He rewrote sections of code. He fixed what was broken. He pushed himself through the fog of exhaustion. Hours passed. The sun began to rise, and then his program ran. Smooth, clean, flawless. The project he had been silently building for years finally came alive in his hands. He didn't celebrate. He didn't scream. He didn't share. He just whispered to himself, This is why I stayed silent. Because when you work in the dark long enough, there comes a day when the light bends toward you, and Noah's light had just begun to rise. The morning his project finally worked, Noah walked to class with a strange stillness in his chest, a kind of quiet victory, not loud, not prideful, just steady. The world around him felt different. The sky looked sharper, the cold air stung less. Even the noise of students rushing to class sounded distant, almost unreal. He didn't tell anyone what he had accomplished. He didn't need to. Real milestones don't need witnesses. When he entered the building, Ethan and his group were already there, arguing loudly about a design issue. Ethan's voice rose above everyone else's, sharp, confident, hungry for control. He looked tired in a way Noah understood deeply. But unlike Noah, Ethan needed people to see his exhaustion. He needed an audience even for his suffering. Noah just kept walking. Ethan saw him, paused, and then smirked. "Hey, silent guy," he called out. "Got anything to show for the competition yet, or are you still playing mystery coder?" Noah didn't break stride. He didn't even look at him. Silence, when mastered, is the most disrespectful answer. Ethan hated that. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed. He wasn't used to being ignored, and he wasn't used to losing control of the room, but Noah's calmness, his quiet refusal to react, made Ethan feel invisible. And that was something his ego couldn't handle. He stepped in front of Noah, blocking his way. You know, if you're going to compete, you could at least pretend you're trying. Noah finally looked at him. His voice was soft even. "I don't pretend." It was just 3 words, simple words. But they hit Ethan harder than any insult, because Noah didn't have to raise his voice, show his work, or defend himself. The silence behind Noah's confidence was louder than any brag Ethan could make. Ethan stepped aside, but the fire in his eyes grew. That was the moment jealousy morphed into something uglier. Fear. Noah walked away, his steps steady, his mind clear. He had bigger things to focus on than a loud boy with fragile pride, but trouble has a way of finding the quiet ones. As the competition deadline approached, stress filled the campus like static. Teams pulled all-nighters, people fought. Coffee cups stacked like tiny monuments to desperation. Ethan's group grew more chaotic by the day. Too many leaders, not enough direction. Noah stayed consistent. Every night he returned to his little rented room, opened his laptop, and improved his project. He didn't care about the prize. He cared about the creation. He cared about the idea. He cared about becoming someone he could respect. But the universe wasn't done testing him. One night, just 4 days before the final submission, Noah came back from class and opened his laptop. Something was wrong. Files were missing. File names were altered. Whole sections of code had been deleted. His chest tightened. His hands began to shake. He checked the logs, checked access history, checked everything, and then he saw it. Someone had hacked into his system. Someone had copied his entire project and wiped his progress clean. Noah froze. His heartbeat turned into a hammer inside his ribs. For a moment he couldn't breathe. The room spun around him. His mind went blank. He had worked in silence for years. He had sacrificed sleep, friendship's joy. He had hidden everything to protect it, and someone had found it anyway. Someone had stolen his silence. He stood slowly, gripping the edge of his desk to steady himself. His mind raced through the possibilities. Very few people knew he was even working on something serious. Even fewer could guess how far he had come. But one person had tried hard to expose him. One person saw him as a threat. One person watched him too closely. Ethan. The thought felt like acid dripping down his spine. Noah wasn't the kind of person who jumped to conclusions. He believed in proof, not assumptions, but the timing, the tension, the competition. Everything pointed in one direction. Still, he didn't message Ethan. He didn't confront him. He didn't accuse anyone. He sat down, closed his eyes, took 3 slow breaths. Then he whispered one promise to himself: "You will not take this from me. Not again." His fingers returned to the keyboard, not shaking now, but steady, focused, fierce. He began checking what remained, what could be restored, what fragments he could rebuild. Hours passed, then dawn, then noon, then night again. His eyes burned. His stomach growled. His entire body felt like it was made of exhaustion. But Noah didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Not because of the competition, but because of something deeper. He refused to let someone else write his ending. By the third night, after barely any sleep, he had rebuilt half the project. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished. But it was alive again. Still, something kept clawing inside him. The violence of what happened, the invasion of his private world, the theft of his silent work. But the worst part? He couldn't tell anyone. He had no team to alert, no group to lean on, no partner to help him fix the mess. Silence had made him powerful, but now silence made him alone, and loneliness, mixed with betrayal, is a dangerous fire. On the fourth day, the submission deadline, Noah walked into the building with dark circles under his eyes and a fire in his chest that no one could see. His rebuilt project was complete. Not perfect, not what it could have been, but enough. Enough to show he hadn't broken, enough to prove he wouldn't be erased, enough to remind him why he had chosen silence in the first place. He submitted it with a steady hand. Then he waited, in silence. When Noah stepped into the lecture hall for the final competition presentations, the air felt electric. Nervous energy filled the room. Tapping feet, whispered rehearsals, shaky breathing. Teams huddled together, adjusting slides at the last minute. Laptops glowed like tiny suns. Noah walked in alone. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look excited. He looked steady. Silence gives a person a kind of presence that noise can't imitate. People felt him before they saw him. Heads turned. Conversation softened. Even Ethan glanced up, and something in his expression flickered. Arrogance mixed with unease. The professor started the event with a long speech about innovation and perseverance. Noah barely heard it. His mind was calm, laser-focused. He wasn't thinking about the prize. He wasn't thinking about revenge. He was thinking about survival, about rebuilding what was stolen from him, about the quiet fire burning in his chest. Teams presented one by one. Ethan's group went early, showing off a polished product. Their slides were clean, their pitch rehearsed, their confidence loud. People clapped. A few whispered that Ethan's team would probably win. Noah didn't react. When the professor finally called his name, the room shifted. Chairs creaked, whispers rose, people leaned in. The quiet kid, the lone wolf, the one who never spoke. What could he possibly have made alone? Noah walked to the front, plugged in his laptop, and opened his project. His hands didn't shake. His voice didn't quiver. He looked at the crowd with the calmness of someone who had already fought his hardest battles in the dark. He began speaking, softly, evenly, simply. His story wasn't dramatic. He didn't brag. He didn't sell himself as a genius. He talked about the problem he wanted to solve, how he approached it, and how the app worked. He didn't mention the hacking. He didn't mention the lost files. He didn't mention the 3 nights of rebuilding. He spoke like a creator, not a victim, not a competitor, just someone who loved the work. When he demonstrated the app, simple, intuitive, functional, the room grew still, not impressed by his charisma, but by the clarity of vision behind what he built. People weren't expecting that. They weren't expecting him. And Ethan felt it. He felt the shift, the fear, the slipping of control, because Noah wasn't trying to win. But he could. When the presentation ended, Noah quietly unplugged his laptop and returned to his seat. People stared as he passed, some with respect, some with confusion, some with envy. Ethan watched him the entire way, jaw tight, mind racing. He knew. He knew Noah had something real, something he couldn't fake, something he couldn't steal again, and Ethan hated that. When the judges left to deliberate, the whispering in the room grew louder. Did you see his design? He worked alone? How did he pull that off? He's better than people think. Noah heard all of it, but none of it touched him. Compliments mean nothing when you've learned to live without them. He stepped outside into the hallway, needing air. The building was quiet. Echoing footsteps, distant chatter, the hum of old lights. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes, and then he heard it, a voice he had grown to recognize. Ethan. You think you're better than everyone, don't you? Noah opened his eyes slowly. Ethan stood a few feet away, fists clenched, expression twisted with anger he had been swallowing for weeks. No, Noah said softly. I think I don't need to prove anything to you. Ethan's jaw twitched. That project is mine, Noah finished. A dangerous silence settled between them. For the first time, Ethan realized he wasn't talking to the quiet boy in the back of the room anymore. He was talking to someone who had built himself from the ground up, alone, someone who didn't fear him, someone who didn't need him, someone who didn't care about his approval or his noise, and that terrified Ethan. His voice dropped. You should have told someone you were in the competition, he muttered. You made it too easy. Noah's eyes narrowed. Too easy for what? Ethan swallowed, and the answer Noah saw in his eyes only confirmed what he already knew. Noah stepped closer, not aggressive, not loud, just firm. You can steal code, he whispered, but you can't steal direction, you can't copy soul. Ethan looked away. What you lose in silence, Noah said, you rebuild with strength. Ethan didn't reply. He couldn't. Noah turned and walked away. He didn't need to stay. He didn't need more words. Silence carried the victory for him. When the judges returned, the room fell still. Everyone braced for the results. Noah sat in the back again, expression blank. Heartbeat calm. The professor began reading the results. 3rd place. 2nd place. Noah's name hadn't been called. A few students glanced back at him. Ethan stared straight ahead, jaw tight enough to crack, and then the professor announced, 1st place goes to Noah Rivers. The room burst into murmurs, surprise, confusion, disbelief. Noah blinked once, just once. He didn't smile. He didn't react. He simply stood and walked to the front. The applause felt far away, like echoes in someone else's life. The certificate felt weightless in his hands. The praise felt irrelevant because Noah hadn't worked for applause. He hadn't worked to prove anyone wrong. He hadn't worked for a title. He had worked to become someone unbreakable. And winning didn't change him. It confirmed him. He walked off the stage the same way he had walked on, quietly, steadily, without looking for eyes or approval. But one thing was different now. The world finally noticed the storm that had been building in the dark, and it was only the beginning. Winning changed nothing on the outside, but everything on the inside. Noah didn't post about the competition. He didn't celebrate online. He didn't buy anything expensive. He went home, closed his bedroom door, sat at his small desk, and opened his laptop. Not to rest, not to brag, not to enjoy the victory, but to work. Because people think winning is the final chapter. They don't understand that for silent workers, winning is only proof that the path is right, nothing more. It doesn't end the grind, it fuels it. Noah didn't care about applause. Applause fades, momentum stays, so he kept building. The app he had created, the one he rebuilt in the ashes of betrayal, had opened something inside him. A direction, a blueprint, a hunger. He realized he didn't just want to make one project. He wanted to create an entire system, a world, a future shaped by his hands alone. But growth never comes without pressure. And pressure was coming. A month after the competition, the university sent Noah an invitation to join a private innovation incubator. Only 7 students were selected each year. It was a path that could lead to investors, scholarships, partnerships, a career. It was the kind of opportunity people dreamed about. Noah accepted quietly. He didn't tell his family. He didn't tell classmates. He especially didn't tell Ethan. The incubator labs were underground, cold, metallic rooms with humming servers and glass walls. Noah liked working there. The silence felt sharper, cleaner, more meaningful, but not everyone there was quiet. On the first day, he met Mira. She was everything he wasn't, outgoing, sharp-tongued, effortlessly confident. She introduced herself with a grin that felt like she already knew she was unforgettable. "You're Noah, right?" "The quiet storm who beat everyone." He blinked. "Something like that." She laughed. "Well, I hope you're good, because I'm here to win this year." He didn't answer. Not because he was intimidated. He simply didn't know how to match her energy. But as weeks passed, Mira kept talking to him, asking questions, trying to understand how his mind worked. She was persistent, curious, stubborn. Like someone studying a locked door she was determined to open. Noah didn't push her away, but he didn't let her in either. Silence had become his shield. And some shields are hard to put down. Still, there was something different about Mira. She didn't laugh at dreams. She didn't talk for attention. She didn't try to show off. She spoke with purpose, with honesty, with edge. And Noah found himself listening. One evening, while they were the last 2 in the lab, she asked a question he wasn't prepared for. "Why do you work alone?" Noah didn't answer immediately. His fingers paused over the keyboard. He looked at the glowing code on his screen, then at her. "Because silence keeps things clean," he said finally. "Noise ruins ideas." She tilted her head. "But silence can also bury you." "Doesn't it get lonely?" He didn't answer, because the truth was heavy. Yes, it got lonely. But loneliness was easier than betrayal. Mira didn't push. She just nodded, as if she understood more than she let on. And that was the beginning of something Noah didn't expect. Connection, not friendship, not yet. Just presence. A presence that didn't demand anything, didn't invade, didn't judge. A presence that didn't break his silence, but softened it. But where there is growth, darkness follows. Noah's work exploded in quality. His new project was bigger, more ambitious, more dangerous than anything he had built before. A platform that could track study patterns, predict struggles, offer solutions, an intelligent learning system built from scratch. It was genius. But genius attracts attention. One night, while leaving the lab, Noah heard familiar voices echoing down the hallway. Ethan. Of course, he wasn't alone. 2 others from his old group were with him. Their voices dripped with frustration. "I'm telling you," Ethan hissed. "He didn't just get lucky. There's something off. Nobody grows that fast." "Maybe he's just better than you," one of them joked. Ethan stopped. The air went sharp. His voice dropped. "You don't get it. He isn't normal. Nobody works like that unless they're hiding something." Noah's stomach tightened. Hiding something. That was exactly what he was doing. His work, his progress, his world. Ethan continued, voice bitter and low, "And I'm going to find out what it is." A coldness seeped into Noah's chest. He stayed still in the shadows, waiting until they left. His heartbeat felt like ice cracking. Ethan wasn't done with him. Not even after losing, not even after being exposed without needing words. And the worst part, Ethan wasn't entirely wrong. Noah was hiding something, not something dark, something powerful, and people fear what they do not understand. As weeks passed, life twisted into a strange balance. In the lab, Noah worked harder than ever. At home, he barely slept. With Mira around, he spoke more, not much, but more than silence. With Ethan lurking, he watched every corner, every login, every file. One night, as Noah packed up his things, Mira noticed the tension in his shoulders. "You okay?" she asked softly. He hesitated, then nodded. But Mira saw through him. "Someone's bothering you." Noah looked up sharply. She leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "You're too careful, too guarded, and I've seen that look before." "What look?" "The look of someone who's been burned." He didn't reply. Mira let out a slow breath. "You don't have to tell me, but just know, you don't have to do everything alone." Her voice was so calm, so steady, that it shook something inside him, a reminder of the boy who had once believed in people before they proved him wrong. He swallowed. "I'm not alone." "You are," she whispered. "You just don't admit it." He looked away because she was right, and he hated that she was right. 2 nights later, everything cracked. It was past midnight. Noah was deep in code, headphones on, when a new alert pinged on his screen. Unauthorized login attempt. Location, campus, source, unknown device. Noah's blood went cold. Another attempt, then another, then another. He ripped off his headphones, heart pounding. Someone was trying to break into his work again, someone persistent, someone desperate, someone who wanted what he had. His chest tightened with a fear he tried to bury. He whispered to himself, "Not this time." He shut his laptop, grabbed his backpack, and ran. Noah sprinted across campus, cold night air slicing his lungs. Every breath felt like fire. His heart hammered violently against his ribs, each beat echoing the same fear. Someone was trying to erase him again. The buildings were mostly dark, tall silhouettes against the sky, quiet and asleep. But the computer labs in the East Wing still glowed faintly. He knew exactly where the intrusion was coming from. He reached the steps, pushed through the heavy doors, and slipped inside. The hallway lights flickered with that old buzzing hum he had grown used to. Tonight it felt like a warning. Noah slowed his steps, breathing hard, every sense sharpened. He approached the lab door and saw it, light spilling out from underneath. Someone was inside. He pushed the door open. Ethan sat at a computer. The moment Ethan saw Noah, he froze, like a thief caught mid-crime. His eyes widened, not with guilt, but with the kind of fear that comes from underestimating someone too many times. Noah's voice was low, a quiet, dangerous low. "I asked you once," he said, "to stay out of my way." Ethan swallowed, fingers hovering over the keyboard like he still wasn't sure whether to hide what he was doing or finish it. "It's not what it looks like." "No," Noah cut him off. "It's exactly what it looks like." Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "You think you're the only one who gets to be talented? You think you're the only one who can build something important? You walk around like you're above everyone, too good to share your work, too good to talk to people?" Noah stepped closer. "Is that what this is about? Your ego?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "You made me look stupid. I didn't do anything to you." "You existed," Ethan hissed. Noah stared at him. This wasn't jealousy. This wasn't competition. This wasn't rivalry. This was fear. Fear of being overshadowed by someone who didn't even want the spotlight. Noah exhaled slowly, steadying himself. "You can take my code," he said quietly. "You can pretend it's yours, but you'll never be able to build what I'm building." Ethan shook his head, anger and panic twisting together. "You think silence makes you special? It makes you a coward. Real creators show their work. Real creators stand in the light." "No," Noah said, voice calm enough to unsettle him. "Real creators don't need the light." He leaned in. "And people who steal from the dark never survive the dawn." Ethan flinched. For a moment, silence filled the room, thick, tense, suffocating. Noah expected Ethan to yell, or threaten him, or deny everything. Instead, Ethan broke. His shoulders sagged, his voice cracked. "You don't get it," he whispered. "I'm supposed to be the best. I'm supposed to win. I've always been the one everyone looks up to, and then you showed up, working alone, barely speaking, and you just... He swallowed hard. You made me feel like I was nothing. Noah felt something shift inside him. He wasn't angry anymore. He was tired. Tired of being hunted for being quiet. Tired of people projecting their insecurities onto his silence. Tired of fighting battles he never asked for. He turned away. "Keep the file you copied," Noah said. "It won't help you." Ethan blinked. "You're not reporting me?" Noah shook his head. "No, because you're not my enemy. My enemy is who I used to be, the one who talked too much, trusted too easily, and believed people would protect my dreams." He walked to the door. "But I won't be that person again." Ethan didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't speak. He just watched Noah leave, and Noah didn't look back. When he stepped outside, the cold air felt different, cleaner, sharper, almost peaceful. He felt lighter, like he had been carrying a weight he didn't realize was crushing him. But as he walked across campus, a realization hit him. He wasn't just protecting his work, he was protecting his future, and futures are not built in fear. Noah returned to his room, opened his laptop, and checked the logs again. The intrusion attempts had stopped. The threat was over, at least for now. He locked everything down, set new encryption, secured every corner of his system like he was fortifying a castle. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair, exhausted but calm. But calm doesn't last. 2 days later, Mira found him sitting alone outside after class. She sat beside him without asking, her knee bumping his lightly. "You look worse than usual," she teased softly. Noah exhaled. He didn't want to talk. Not about Ethan, not about hacking, not about fear. But Mira wasn't asking about code. She was asking about him. "You ever feel like people want you to fail?" he asked quietly. Mira looked at him, surprised by the question. She leaned back, arms crossed. "All the time," she said. "But I don't care." He glanced at her. "How do you not care?" She smiled, small, sad, sharp. "Because I learned a long time ago that people hate what they can't predict." "You're unpredictable, Noah. Quiet people always are. Silence scares them." Her words slipped into him like truth he had been trying to avoid. "Does it scare you?" he asked softly. She looked at him with a steady, honest gaze. "No, it interests me." Noah didn't know what to do with that. Interest was dangerous. Interest broke people's silence. Interest unlocked doors he kept sealed, but Mira didn't push. She stood, stretched, then pointed at his chest. "Whatever you're fighting, don't fight it alone." And she walked away. Her words stayed long after she left. Don't fight it alone. He wasn't sure if he could, but he also wasn't sure if he wanted to keep suffering in silence. For the first time, Noah wondered if silence had stopped being a shield and started becoming a wall, one he didn't know how to climb. That night, Noah returned to the lab, not to work, but to think. He sat at his desk, staring at the glowing screen, listening to the soft hum of machines. He whispered to himself, "Silence made me. But will silence break me?" He didn't have the answer, but something inside him whispered back, "Not if you grow past it." Noah took a breath, slow, steady breath, and for the first time in years, he opened a blank document, typed a message, paused, deleted it, typed again. Finally, he sent it. "Mira, are you still awake?" The silence in the room suddenly felt different. Not heavy, not lonely, not threatening. It felt like possibility, like the beginning of a new chapter, one he didn't have to write completely alone. Mira replied within seconds. "Yeah, I'm awake. What's going on?" Noah stared at the message, feeling the weight of every unsent thought pressing against the back of his throat. He wasn't used to reaching out. He wasn't used to letting anyone step inside the room he had locked from the world. Working in silence teaches you how to survive, but it also teaches you how to hide. He didn't know which one he was doing anymore. His fingers hesitated over the keyboard before he finally wrote, "Can you meet me in the lab?" 3 dots blinked. Then her reply came, Give me 10 minutes. Noah closed his laptop and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. His chest felt tight in a way he couldn't explain. Not fear, not anxiety, something more complicated, something he didn't like acknowledging, because letting someone in meant giving them access. And access was how things broke. But Mira wasn't like the others. She didn't want to take anything. She didn't want to compete. She didn't want to win through someone else's weakness. She wanted to understand. And understanding is more dangerous than ambition. When she walked into the lab, her hair tied up in a messy braid and a jacket thrown over her shoulders, she looked at him with that same sharp, curious expression she always had. "What's wrong?" she asked. Noah swallowed. His fingers tapped lightly on the desk, a quiet rhythm he always used when trying to organize thoughts he didn't want to speak. He didn't look at her when he said, "Someone tried to steal my work again." Her expression hardened instantly. "Who?" He shook his head. "It doesn't matter." "It matters," she said. "It matters a lot." He sighed. "It's handled." Mira stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Noah, if you're being targeted because you're better than they can handle, you need to protect yourself, or at least let someone help you." He finally turned toward her. "I don't need help." Her lips pressed into a line. "That's your problem," she said softly. "You think asking for help makes you weak, but it doesn't. It makes you human." "I'm not trying to be human," he said quietly. That made her stop. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the machines filled the space between them. Mira walked around the desk, leaned against the edge, and crossed her arms. "Then what are you trying to be?" Noah looked at the screens in front of him, the lines of glowing code, the pieces of his life held together with silence and scars. "Untouchable," he said. Mira exhaled slowly. "That's not strength, Noah. That's fear." He didn't argue. He couldn't, because deep inside, under the layers of discipline and cold determination, she was right. Silence had turned into fear a long time ago. Fear of being mocked. Fear of being stolen from. Fear of being seen too closely. Fear of becoming that 12-year-old boy again, standing in the middle of a laughing classroom. But Noah didn't know how to admit that, not even to himself. Mira sat down at the desk beside him, close enough that he could feel her presence, but not close enough to overwhelm him. "Tell me what happened," she said. At first, he said nothing. But Mira didn't rush him. She waited with a silence that didn't pressure him, that didn't take anything from him. Finally, he spoke. Not everything. Not the whole story. Just enough. He told her about the hacking attempts, about the late-night intrusion, about finding Ethan in the lab, about the confrontation, about the fear. Mira listened. Really listened. When he finished, she didn't react with shock or anger. She didn't gasp or ask why he hadn't told anyone sooner. She just nodded. Slowly, thoughtfully. And then she said something he never expected. "Let me help you." He stared at her. "What do you mean?" She tilted her head. "You're brilliant, Noah, but you're also exhausted. And when you work completely alone, you make yourself easy to target." "I'm not asking for a partner," he said quietly. "I know," she replied, "but you need an ally." That word landed hard. Noah didn't have allies. He had walls, he had systems, he had passwords, he had his own mind and nothing else. But an ally? That required trust. Trust was something he had buried years ago. "No," he said, "I can't." Mira didn't argue. She just looked disappointed in a way that felt worse than anger. "Okay," she said softly, "if that's what you want." She stood to leave. Noah watched her walk to the door, watched his silence push away the one person who wasn't trying to use him. The lab suddenly felt emptier, colder, and for the first time, silence felt like a mistake. "Mira," he said quietly. She stopped. Turned. Waited. He swallowed. "Stay." Her expression softened. She walked back toward him. He didn't tell her everything, not about Lila, not about the classroom humiliation, not about years of being the quiet one who shut the world out, not about how silence had become his armor and his curse, but he told her this: I don't know how to let people in. I don't know how to trust anyone with my work. Every time I've shared something important, someone tried to break it. Mira stepped closer until she was right in front of him. I'm not here to break, she said. I'm here to build. Noah looked at her, really looked at her, and something inside him cracked. Not his walls, not his silence, not his strength, his loneliness. Quietly, almost imperceptibly, he nodded, and that was enough. Over the next week, things shifted. Mira didn't invade his work. She didn't ask for access. She didn't pry into his projects. She just stayed. Sometimes she worked at the desk beside him, softly humming playlists through her earbuds. Sometimes she brought him coffee without saying a word. Sometimes she talked about her own ideas, her own dreams, her own battles with pressure and expectations. She didn't ask him to open up, but her presence made it easier. And Noah? He started speaking more, not much, not loudly, but more. He started trusting the space she created, a silent space shared between two people who didn't need to fill it with noise. For the first time, Noah wasn't working in complete isolation, but the universe always reacts when a quiet person begins to change, and it reacted violently. Because 2 weeks later, a professor pulled Noah aside. An email was shown to him, a complaint, a file attachment. Someone had submitted anonymous evidence that Noah had stolen code from another student, and that someone was Ethan. The real war had begun. Noah felt the floor tilt beneath him. The professor's office was small, cluttered, lined with books that smelled of dust and old ambition, but Noah barely saw any of it. His eyes were locked on the email printed in the professor's hand. Anonymous complaint, accusation, code theft, attached evidence, fragments of Noah's own project, sent as if someone else had written them first. His lungs tightened, his heartbeat slowed, the world dimmed around the edges. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an accident. This was a hit, a deliberate, calculated attack to destroy him. Noah, the professor said gently, I'm required to investigate this. It doesn't mean you're guilty. But Noah wasn't listening. His mind was replaying it all. The hacking attempts, the midnight intrusion, Ethan's confession, the desperation in his eyes, the promise of revenge without ever saying the word. Noah inhaled slowly. Can I see the full file? He asked. The professor turned the screen toward him. And there it was, a perfectly staged betrayal. The code file Ethan stole, line for line, sent anonymously, claiming that Noah had copied him. A quiet numbness washed through Noah's veins. The professor cleared his throat. I know this is upsetting, but I have to ask, did you use someone else's work at any stage? Noah lifted his head. His voice was steady, cold, sharpened by a silence forged from years of survival. No, he said. I built everything myself. The professor nodded slowly, studying him. We'll review logs, timestamps, version history. It might take days. Days. Days where his reputation would hang by a thread. Days where professors would whisper. Days where students would gossip. Days where Mira would see everything he feared most. That silence wasn't protection. It was vulnerability. Noah stood. Are we done? He asked. For now, the professor said softly. Noah walked out of the office with the same calm expression he always wore, but inside something was breaking. He didn't go to class. He didn't go back to the dorm. He headed straight to the lab. He didn't slam the door. He didn't throw things. He didn't scream. He simply sat down, hands trembling violently, and stared at the blank screen. He had worked for years in silence. He had rebuilt everything twice. He had survived betrayal, exhaustion, isolation, and now someone was trying to erase him again. This wasn't just about competition. This was about identity, about the last part of him he hadn't allowed the world to touch, his work, his purpose, his fire. And Ethan wanted to destroy it because he felt small. Noah's fingers curled into fists. He whispered through clenched teeth, "I am not losing again." The lab door opened softly. Mira. She stepped inside slowly, as if she already sensed the heaviness in the air. Her eyes searched his face, then the shaking in his hands. "Noah," she whispered. He didn't look at her. She moved closer, knelt beside his chair. "What happened?" she asked gently. Noah's voice cracked. Not with emotion, but with a kind of raw exhaustion no one his age should have felt. "Someone reported me for stealing code." Mira's eyes widened. No, Noah, you would never." "I know," he said quietly, "but the file they sent, it was mine. Just taken out of context." Mira stood up, anger flashing like a spark. "Who did it?" Noah didn't answer, but silence speaks louder than confession. Mira's face went dark with realization. "Ethan," Noah closed his eyes. "I don't have proof." "You don't need proof," Mira snapped. "You need to fight back." Noah opened his eyes, meeting hers. "How?" he whispered. "If I push too hard, I look guilty. If I do nothing, he wins again. And if I tell the truth, people think I'm making excuses." Mira paused, breathing hard. Then she said something Noah never expected. "You're not fighting this alone." He stared at her, stunned. But Mira wasn't done. She pulled up a chair, sat beside him, and opened her laptop. "We're going through everything," she said firmly. "Your version history, your logs, your backups, every file, every timestamp. We're finding the cracks. And when we do, we expose him." "Mira." "No," she interrupted. "Don't push me away this time." Her voice softened. "You let me stay. Now, let me help." Noah didn't respond. He just blinked hard as if trying to hold back something too heavy to name. And for the first time since the accusation started, his hands stopped shaking. They worked for hours. Mira combed through his system like a detective, relentless, sharp, methodical. Noah worked quietly beside her, reconstructing the chain of events, pulling old logs, piecing together every trace. Every keystroke mattered, every timestamp counted, every detail was a lifeline. Halfway through, Mira looked at him. "You know what your real problem is?" she asked. He raised an eyebrow. "What?" "You built your world alone for so long, you forgot you're allowed to fight with someone beside you." Noah looked away. "I can't depend on people." "You're not depending on me," she said softly. "You're trusting me." "That's different." He swallowed hard. Trust. A word he had buried years ago, a word he used to believe in, a word that felt terrifying now. But Mira didn't push further. She just kept working. And slowly, piece by piece, something emerged. A pattern, a trail, a mistake. Ethan didn't hide well enough, a login signature that didn't belong, a device ID that didn't match Noah's system, a server request with a timestamp recorded seconds before Noah's project disappeared, a digital fingerprint. Silence thickened in the room. Mira sat back, breathing hard. "Noah," she said softly, "this is it. This proves someone tried to steal your work." His chest tightened. For the first time in days, he felt something like hope, not happiness, not relief, just oxygen. And then Mira whispered, "We're going to bury him with this." Noah stared at her. Mira wasn't just helping him. She was fighting for him. And that changed everything. But Noah's battle was far from over, because exposing Ethan would unleash something darker than either of them expected, something that would push Noah's silence to its breaking point and force him to confront everything he had buried. The storm was coming. And this time, it wasn't just about code. It was about identity, about loyalty, about pain, about the boy who built himself in the dark. Finally stepping into the light. By the next morning, Noah felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not fear, not exhaustion, clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you finally stop running from the truth. He wasn't just fighting for his work anymore, he was fighting for the version of himself he had spent years building in silence. When he and Mira walked into the professor's office together, Noah didn't hang his head. He didn't shrink. He didn't apologize for something he didn't do. He carried himself with a calm that came from surviving enough storms to know he wouldn't break. The professor looked surprised to see Mira there. "Is she representing you?" he asked. "No," Noah said softly. "She's supporting me." That simple line hit harder than any argument. They sat down. Noah slid his laptop across the desk. Mira handed over the printed logs and timestamp evidence they had collected. The professor read through everything slowly, eyes narrowing with each new line of proof. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair. "This is significant," he murmured. "This clearly shows unauthorized access to your project." Mira nodded once. "Exactly." Noah sat still, waiting. His silence wasn't fear this time, it was restraint. He knew anger could cloud truth. He didn't need rage. He had evidence. The professor exhaled. "I'll have to take this to the academic board. We must compare this with the complaint." "And the anonymous sender?" Mira pressed. "We'll investigate the source." Noah knew what that meant. They were going to uncover the identity Ethan tried to hide behind. The professor looked at him with something like regret. "Noah, I'm sorry this happened to you." Noah didn't answer. He stood, nodded once, and walked out of the room. Outside, the hallway was empty. Still, cold. Mira stepped beside him. "You okay?" she asked softly. He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "I'm tired." Mira nodded. "I know." But Noah wasn't talking about lack of sleep. He was tired of surviving. Tired of fighting alone, tired of being the quiet one people thought they could step on, and something was shifting, something dangerous, something necessary. He wasn't going to hide anymore. 3 days passed before the board scheduled the hearing. The rumors spread across campus like wildfire. Noah got accused of plagiarism. Someone submitted fake evidence. Apparently he has proof it was hacked. Who would even dare go after him? Some people looked at him with pity, some with doubt, some with curiosity. Noah ignored all of them, but Ethan didn't. Every time they passed each other, Ethan's eyes flickered with panic, the kind of panic that grows when someone realizes their lies are unraveling, the kind of panic that comes when silence starts speaking the truth, because Ethan knew something most people didn't. Noah wasn't loud, but he was relentless. Noah didn't make threats, but he didn't forgive either. Noah didn't brag about what he would do. He simply did it. And Ethan could feel it. The walls closing in. The hearing room was cold, lined with old wood panels and framed certificates. A long table sat in the center. Professors, committee members, advisors, all waiting. Noah entered first. Mira walked behind him, not speaking, but her presence grounded him. Ethan arrived last. His face was pale, hands trembling, eyes darting everywhere except at Noah. The chair of the board cleared her throat. "We're here to review a plagiarism complaint filed anonymously against Noah Rivers." Ethan shifted in his seat. The chair continued. "Noah has provided counter evidence, including system logs and access history that suggest unauthorized entry into his files." She turned toward Ethan. "We will begin by identifying the source of the anonymous complaint." Silence fell over the room. Dense, suffocating. A tech specialist entered carrying a laptop. He connected it to the projector. Typed .opened logs displayed the IP trail. Mira leaned forward. Noah stayed still. The specialist spoke. The sender of the anonymous complaint was a pause. The room held its breath. Ethan Cole. Everything shattered at once. Gasps, whispers. Ethan's chair scraping against the floor as he stood too fast. No, that's wrong, he stammered. I wasn't. But the trail didn't lie. Noah didn't move, didn't blink, didn't flinch. He just watched, not with satisfaction, not with triumph, just with a cold, quiet acceptance. This was the cost of silence. This was the consequence of self-protection. This was what happens when you let the wrong people close enough to hurt you. The chairwoman looked at Ethan. You attempted to sabotage another student's project. This is a serious violation. He made me look like a failure, Ethan whispered, defeated. You made yourself look like a failure, Mira snapped. Ethan collapsed back into his seat, face in his hands. Noah stood. He looked at the board, then at Ethan, then at the door. I didn't come here for revenge, he said quietly. I came here for truth. The room fell silent again. Raw, heavy, unforgettable. We have our answer, the chair said. Noah, your record is cleared. Ethan, you will be placed under disciplinary review. Noah nodded once. Then he walked out. Mira followed. Outside, the hallway felt warmer than usual. The air lighter. The weight on his shoulders. Finally lifting. Mira exhaled. You did it. Noah shook his head. No, he whispered. We did. Mira's expression softened. Noah, you don't have to go back to being alone now. He looked at her, really looked at her, and said the words he never thought he'd say again. I don't want to. But the universe wasn't finished with him yet because winning the hearing wasn't the end. It was the beginning of Noah learning that silence had protected him long enough. And now it was time to step into something bigger, louder, and far more dangerous. Becoming the person he was meant to be. Peace didn't come the way Noah expected. He thought clearing his name would feel like a sunrise. Golden, warm, victorious. But instead, it felt like a quiet room after a storm. The air was different. The silence was different, not sharp, not protective, just empty. For the first time in years, Noah didn't know what to do with the quiet. He had spent so long surviving, fighting, rebuilding, defending, hiding. Every day was a battle. Every night was a war. He didn't know how to exist in a world where the threat had finally been exposed. People treated him differently after the hearing, some with respect, some with fear, some with awe. Noah didn't want any of it. He didn't care about the whispers in hallways. He didn't care about the looks in classrooms. He didn't care about being the quiet kid who took down a fraud. He wanted one thing only, a life that wasn't built around protecting himself. But wanting something and knowing how to have it were two different things. 3 days after the hearing, Noah sat alone on the rooftop of the engineering building. The sky above him was bruised with purple clouds, the city lights glowing beneath like dying embers. This had become his place, the one place where he could breathe. Mira found him there, of course. She sat beside him without asking, pulling her knees up to her chest, her jacket thrown loosely around her shoulders. You vanished, she said softly. I needed space. I know. That's why I didn't knock on your door. She paused. But I also knew you'd come here. He glanced sideways. How? She shrugged. This is where people go when they're trying to put themselves back together. Noah didn't deny it. The cold wind brushed against his face. He closed his eyes for a moment. I don't know how to be normal, he admitted quietly. Mira tilted her head. Normal is overrated. No, he said. I don't know how to stop being on guard. I don't know how to stop expecting people to hurt me. That's not a flaw, she whispered. That's trauma. The word hit him like a punch. He didn't think his pain counted as trauma. He thought he was just cautious, disciplined, private. Mira wasn't done. You survived alone for so long that you forgot how to exist any other way. He looked at her, eyes dark and tired. Then what do I do now? Mira leaned forward. You grow, she said, but you grow differently this time. Not in darkness, not in silence, not against the world, but with it. Her words didn't fix him. Nothing fixes a person that quickly, but they reached him. Someone saw him. Not the code, not the skill, not the quiet brilliance. Him. And that alone cracked something in him he didn't know could crack anymore. The next few weeks became a strange transition. Noah still worked. He always worked. But the atmosphere had changed. He found himself looking up more, listening more, speaking more. Mira became a constant, sometimes beside him in the lab, sometimes walking with him across campus, sometimes just sitting silently in his presence. She never demanded emotional intimacy. She never asked him for details he wasn't ready to give. She never forced conversation. She simply stayed. Her presence felt grounding. And Noah didn't realize how much he needed grounding until one day he didn't feel like falling. One evening as they walked back from the lab, Mira nudged him lightly. "You know," she said, "now that the board cleared your name, people are waiting to see what you build next." Noah frowned. "That doesn't matter." She laughed softly. "No, Noah, it matters. Not because people expect it, but because you want it." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it because she was right. Building was his oxygen. Silence was his shield. Progress was his purpose. But now, for the first time, he wanted something more than just survival. He wanted creation, growth, impact, life. "What if I fail?" he whispered. Mira smirked gently. "That's the fear talking, not you." He looked at her with eyes that held years of exhaustion, years of protecting himself too tightly. "How do you know?" She touched his wrist. Light, careful, almost hesitant. "Because failing doesn't scare the real you," she said. "What scares you is being seen." Noah swallowed hard. The truth sat heavy between them. He had spent years working in silence, so no one could ridicule his dreams like before. He hid everything, the passion, the potential, the breakthroughs, because silence protected him from humiliation, jealousy, betrayal. But maybe silence wasn't meant to be a prison. Maybe it was meant to be a foundation, a place to grow from, not a place to hide in. The next morning, Noah returned to the lab earlier than usual. The world outside was still dark, the sun barely a stain of amber on the horizon. He sat at his desk, opened his laptop, stared at the blank project folder for a long moment. His fingers hovered over the keys. Then he whispered, "This time, I build for me." He began typing. Slow at first, cautious, unsure, then faster, stronger, clearer. Lines of code filled the screen. Ideas he had buried resurfaced. Dreams he had locked away returned like forgotten ghosts finding their names again. He didn't hide the new project behind 20 layers of encryption. He didn't lock the door. He didn't shrink into himself. He simply created. For the first time, silence felt like possibility, not protection. Hours later, when Mira walked into the lab, she stopped when she saw the intensity in his eyes, the speed of his fingers, the focus in his posture. She smiled. "What are you building?" she asked. Noah didn't stop typing. He didn't shut his laptop. He didn't hide the screen. Instead, for the first time, he let someone see him while he was becoming. He turned the laptop slightly toward her. "It's a platform," he said quietly. "Something that helps people learn the way I learned. Alone, late, in the dark, but with structure, with support." Mira's eyes widened. "Noah, that's huge." He nodded once. "It needs to be." He paused, then added quietly, "I'm tired of building things that only I get to see." Mira's expression softened into something warm, something proud. "Noah," she whispered, "you're finally stepping out of the shadows." He shook his head. "No," he said, "I'm bringing the shadows with me." She frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" He looked at her with a calm, strong, quiet certainty. "Working in silence wasn't wrong. It shaped me. It protected me. It made me who I am. But now Now I get to choose when to be silent. I'm not forced into it anymore. Mira smiled slowly. That's growth, Noah. He took a breath, a deep, steady breath, and for the first time in years, he felt free. Not from the world, not from his past, not from pain, free from the fear that had kept him quiet, free from the belief that silence was the only way, but growth does something dangerous. It draws attention, and attention attracts shadows of its own, because the world wasn't done testing him. Not yet. Not even close. And the next test would challenge not his silence, but his heart. The next test didn't arrive loudly. It didn't crash into Noah's life. It didn't announce itself with chaos or conflict. It came quietly, the same way everything important had come to him, softly, silently, like a shadow shifting shape. It began with Mira. She started staying longer in the lab. Sometimes she would work beside him late into the night, her headphones in, humming softly under her breath. Sometimes she would watch him type, eyes following the rhythm of his fingers like she was studying something precise, something delicate. Sometimes she would fall asleep at her desk, her head resting on her arms, strands of hair slipping across her face. Noah would look at her, then at the blanket he kept in his bottom drawer, one he pretended was for himself, and quietly drape it over her shoulders. She never mentioned it, but she always smiled at him the next morning. Other times, she tried to pull him out of his world, a walk across campus, a late-night coffee, a chance to breathe in air that didn't smell like machines and ambition. Noah didn't know how to explain the feeling he got around her. It wasn't distraction. It wasn't competition. It wasn't the fear he felt with others. It was ease, the kind of ease that came from someone who didn't need anything from him, someone who wasn't trying to take, someone who didn't see him as a threat or a mystery or a prize, someone who saw him. And Noah didn't know what to do with that. One night, as they walked across the empty courtyard, Mira looked up at the sky, hands buried in her jacket pockets. "You know what I realized?" she asked. "What?" She smiled, eyes reflecting the moonlight. "You're loud." Noah blinked. "What?" Mira stopped walking and turned to him. "You're loud in the way you think, in the way you work, in the way you feel. You just don't use words." He looked at her, confusion creasing his brows. She stepped closer. "When you're focused, you look like the world is on fire inside you. When you work, it's like you're racing yourself. When you talk, your silence says more than most people say in entire speeches." She touched his arm lightly. "You're not a quiet person, Noah. You're a loud soul." His heart stuttered. He didn't know how to respond to that. No one had ever described him like that. No one had ever seen him like that. He swallowed, looking away. "I don't know how to be loud." "You already are," she whispered. And something in him cracked, not painfully, but in a way that felt like light was finally reaching places that had never seen it before. But connection is a fragile thing, and the universe never lets something fragile grow without testing its strength. The test came the next week. A recruiter from a major tech firm visited the incubator. Not just any firm, one of the giants, the kind of name people put on resumes like trophies, the kind of company that could change someone's entire trajectory. They met with top students, evaluating projects, asking questions, taking notes. When the recruiter reached Noah, she paused. "You're the one who built the adaptive learning system prototype," she said. Noah didn't flinch. He nodded once. "I'd like you to come to our internship evaluation," she continued. "We think someone with your mind could go far." Mira looked at him proud. "And Noah?" Noah felt the old instinct rise in his chest, a sharp, quiet instinct. Hide, protect, stay small, stay silent. Don't risk being seen too much. He didn't know how to tell the recruiter that opportunities made him nervous. That attention felt dangerous. That being recognized meant being exposed, and being exposed meant being vulnerable. He didn't know how to say that silence was still his instinctive shelter, so he simply said, "I'll think about it." The recruiter smiled and moved on. Mira looked at him. "You should do it," she said softly. He shook his head. "I'm not ready." "You are." "I just got my life back. I can't risk—" "Noah," she said, stepping closer. "You're not at risk anymore." He looked at her with something like fear. "You don't know that." She held his gaze. "Yes," she whispered, "I do." But Noah couldn't believe it. Not yet. Not fully. Because opportunity felt like exposure, and exposure felt like danger, and danger felt like the past reaching for him again. He didn't want to go backward. He didn't want to lose himself. He didn't want to lose her. The silence between them grew in ways it never had before, not sharp, not cold, not painful, just complicated. Mira didn't push him, but she watched him with a sadness he recognized too well. Disappointment, not in him. In the fear he couldn't shake. Fear someone else had built. Fear someone else had carved into him. Fear he didn't deserve. And that realization broke him more than Ethan ever had. He didn't want to be afraid anymore. He didn't want to live half-lived. He didn't want to let silence define him. But breaking habits built from trauma isn't simple. Some nights, Noah worked until dawn, trying to drown his fear in productivity. Some nights, he lay awake staring at the ceiling, forcing himself to ask questions he had avoided for years. What if silence wasn't strength anymore? What if breaking it was? What if growth meant letting people see the parts of himself he spent years protecting? What if vulnerability wasn't a threat, but a step toward becoming whole? These thoughts terrified him. But something else terrified him more, losing the life he was finally starting to build. A life that didn't revolve around fear, a life that wasn't shaped by past wounds, a life that wasn't small or quiet or hidden, a life with Mira in it. One evening, Noah found her sitting alone in the lab, staring at her laptop but clearly not working. The lights cast soft shadows on her face, making her look both strong and fragile at once. He sat beside her. "You're avoiding me," she said without looking up. "No," he whispered, "I'm avoiding myself." That made her turn, her eyes softened. "Noah, I need you to choose something." "Choose what?" She closed her laptop. "Do you want to keep surviving the way you always have, or do you want to live differently now?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. She touched his hand. Not demanding, not pressing, but inviting. "I'm not asking you to stop being who you are," she said. "I'm asking you to stop hiding behind who you were." His breath caught. Her voice softened further. "You don't have to stop being silent, Noah. Just stop letting silence hold you hostage." He looked at her. Really looked at her. At the person who had stayed when she didn't have to, at the person who had fought beside him when he was breaking, at the person who saw a loud soul where he saw emptiness. And in that moment, something shifted, something deep, something irreversible. Noah whispered, "I don't want to hide anymore." Mira smiled softly. "Good," she said, "because the world is finally ready to see you." He swallowed. "And what if I'm not ready for it?" Mira squeezed his hand gently. "Then I'll stand with you until you are." Noah closed his eyes. And for the first time in his entire life, silence felt like comfort. Not isolation, not fear, not armor, just peace. But peace is fragile. And the next storm waiting for Noah would not come from envy or hacking or betrayal. It would come from something far deeper, something he had avoided for years, his past. And this time, silence wouldn't be enough to save him. Noah didn't expect the past to return the way it did. Not with noise, not with confrontation, not with some dramatic collapse. It returned in the form of a message, a simple email from a name he hadn't heard in years. Lila. His chest tightened the moment he saw it. The air seemed to thin. His fingers froze above the trackpad. He hadn't thought about her in a long time, not consciously. But the wound she left still shaped him more than he liked to admit. She was the first person he ever trusted with a dream, and the first person who taught him why he shouldn't. And now she was reaching out. He opened the email. "Hey, Noah. I know it's been years. I saw your project online. You're doing amazing things. I'm proud of you. I was wondering if we could talk sometime. I owe you an apology." He closed the laptop instantly. His breath shook. His pulse raced. Apology. That word hit him like a blade. He didn't need an apology, not anymore. He needed distance. He needed silence. He needed peace. But the message cracked open a door inside him, one he had nailed shut a long time ago, the door to the boy he used to be. That night, Noah didn't go to the lab. He walked through the campus aimlessly, hands in his pockets, eyes staring at nothing. The cold wind stung his face, but he barely felt it. He thought about 12-year-old him humiliated in his classroom. He thought about 17-year-old him betrayed by a girl he trusted. He thought about all the years he spent building walls so high no one could reach him. He thought about Mira, about the rooftop, about her telling him he was allowed to grow differently now. But growth didn't erase pain, it just gave it shape, and right now the pain felt like it had never left. Mira found him on the old stone steps near the west gate, one of the few places he went when he didn't want to be found. She approached quietly, sitting beside him without asking. "You didn't come to the lab," she said softly. Noah didn't answer. She looked at him carefully. "You're thinking too loudly," he exhaled shakily. "I got an email," he said, "from someone I used to know." "Someone important?" "Yes," he hesitated. "No. That sounds complicated." "It is." Mira waited. She always waited. "She was the first person who made me feel stupid for dreaming," Noah whispered. "The first person who taught me to stay quiet." Mira's brows lowered. What did she want? An apology. Mira's expression hardened instantly. "Are you going to talk to her?" Noah shook his head. "No, I'm not going back there." She nodded slowly, then said something he didn't expect. "You don't have to let people back in to forgive them. You just have to stop letting them live in your head." He turned toward her. "I thought I was over it," he whispered. "I thought silence got rid of it." "Silence doesn't remove pain," she said. "It hides it. And hidden pain grows roots." He swallowed. "Then what do I do?" She reached out, covering his hand with hers. "You face it. You don't run. You don't hide. You don't bury it again." He looked down at their hands, feeling his pulse calm under her touch. "You're not alone now," she added softly. "You don't have to face anything alone anymore." Noah closed his eyes and inhaled the cold night air. He believed her, maybe for the first time. The next morning he replied to Lila, "Thank you for your message. I appreciate it, but I've moved on. I hope you have too. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't anger. It wasn't a reopening of the wound. It was closure, the kind he never thought he'd get." When he hit send, something lifted in his chest. Something loosened. Something quiet and heavy finally let go. For the first time, silence didn't feel like fear. It felt like freedom. From that day on, Noah changed, not loudly, not dramatically, not with sudden revelations or overnight transformations, but slowly, steadily, intentionally. He showed Mira his progress on the new platform. He explained his ideas out loud instead of burying them in his mind. He let her challenge him, let her question him, let her stand beside him, and most importantly, he let himself be seen, not the silent genius, not the guarded coder, not the boy hiding behind walls, just Noah. The real Noah, the one who felt deeply, the one who dreamed fearlessly, the one who had spent too many years thinking his voice was a weakness. One evening after a long work session, he closed his laptop and looked at Mira. "Thank you," he said. She looked confused. "For what?" "For being here." She smiled, small, warm, real. "You let me in," she said. "I just stayed." Noah exhaled slowly. I'm not good at this, he admitted. Letting people close? I know, she whispered, but you're trying. And that's everything. He looked at her with an honesty that surprised even him. I was afraid of losing myself, afraid of losing control, afraid of being hurt again. And now? She asked. He took her hand. Now I'm afraid of losing you? Her breath caught. You won't, she whispered. Not unless you push me away. Noah shook his head softly. I'm done pushing people away. She leaned her forehead against his, eyes closing. And I'm not going anywhere. For the first time in his life, Noah realized something. Silence didn't protect him. People did. The right people. The people who stayed. The people who saw him. The people who didn't try to dim his fire, but helped him carry it. Months later, his platform launched. It wasn't perfect. Nothing meaningful ever is. But it worked. It helped. It grew. Students used it. Teachers talked about it. Recruiters reached out. Opportunities opened, but the world didn't change because of his app. It changed because he did. Noah didn't work in complete silence anymore. He worked with purpose, with confidence, with connection. He didn't hide his dreams. He shared them, protected them, fought for them. And for the first time, he didn't walk alone. Mira was beside him, not carrying him, not fixing him, just standing with him. And the boy who once feared being seen finally stepped into the light, not loudly, not arrogantly, not to prove anything, but because he wanted to, because he was ready, because working in silence had given him strength, but stepping out of silence had given him life. And in that balance, in that beautiful collision of quiet and courage, Noah finally became the person he was always meant to be.